Hey guys, it's Tepco Cycle Repair. Today we're going to be talking about how to lower the forks in your CR80 or any upside down forks. This method should work. Now, I had this all posted up on Supermoto Junkie using PhotoBucket, but it seems like PhotoBucket now wants you to pay $400 to share your photos, and it's ridiculous. When you go onto their website, you just get bombarded with advertisements and ads. So I pulled all the pictures off of there and I put this together. So before you hem me up and get mad at me for putting on a slideshow, I'm just kind of saving this post from the past. So I was notified by a member that they couldn't see any of the pictures. So here we go. I'm going to read the text from the forum, and I'm going to post up the pictures, and I'll show you some before and afters afterwards. Okay. But first off, the reason I made this was because I spent a lot of time searching on the internet trying to find this, and there really wasn't a how-to, step-by-step how to do it. So I'm not a suspension tuner. I just learned all this stuff from research. All right, so here we go. And I use this bike for mini GP-style racing. All right, so I started out with a ratty used set of upside-down forks from a 1999 CR80. The first thing I did was remove the rock guard and clean the outside of the forks. You want to make sure you do everything, keep everything clean, what you're working on. And then remove the top cap to pour out the fluid. In this case, of course, these used forks were empty. I then replaced the cap, and that helps hold everything together when you're trying to get the rebound valve out of the bottom. And you can see here I'm using an impact gun, and that's a 19 millimeter that's on there. After I loosened and removed the bottom part, I removed the top cap and pulled out the internals. I then removed the top cap from the rebound rod and took the spring off. That's a 17 millimeter on the top cap and a 14 millimeter on the lock nut. The rebound adjuster will come out attached to the top cap. This picture shows it's still in the tube, but it was just for demonstration. All right, then you have the rebound rod with a nut on the top of the plastic spring guide. The spring guide will slide off the top after you remove the nut. And in order to slide out the rod out of the bottom, you'll need to remove this clip that it's pointing at right here. All right, you are now left with the rebound rod with the valving and the subdamper tube. If you look closely inside the subdamper tube, you can see the top out spring. Okay, the lowering spacer needs to go inside this tube on the rebound rod between the top out spring and the valving. The picture below shows the rod and spacer needs to go on, and the fluid hole that you don't want to block. All right, at this point you have to decide what spacer to use. My thoughts were it needed to be big enough not to block the fluid passages, fit inside the subdamper tube, and not scratch and damage the internals of the fork. So I went with a 100 psi poly pressure tube. It's the black tube on the bottom of this photo, and I got it from Home Depot. All right, I cut a 3-inch spacer. I cleaned it up, cleaned out all the burrs and everything out of the edging so you don't leave any small shavings in there. I lubed it with some fork oil and slid it into the subdamper tube all the way up against the top out spring. The reason I picked that was it's plastic and the outside diameter is such that it'll fit tightly against the inside of the subdamper tube, stay against the top out spring, and it won't block any fluid. The reason you want to have a spacer in there is that if you don't put the spacer in the top out tube against the top out spring, when the fork fully opens up, if there's nothing to stop it, it'll fully extend to the full length again. And then when you come down, when you off of a wheelie or something, the front wheel is going to slam back down to your cut down spring. So you want to put the spacer in there to control the fully extended length. All right, I then had to cut the spring to match. This was the part I was most worried about because spring rate is very important. So to be sure that your calculations are correct, and either order a spring or get a spring that when cut down is the right tension. Remember, tension increases when a spring is cut. All right, I cut my spring 2.5 inches shorter by hand with a cutting wheel. I cut it straight across to help the spring sit as flat as possible when installed. After cutting, I took a Dremel and smoothed out the fresh cut edges. So after a good cleaning of all the parts and the lowering spacer in place, I reassembled the fork tube. It's pretty easy to do. The only thing that I would like to change is the valving, which with this these type of forks right here, the valve shims are clamped on the outside part, so it's different than a standard shim stack. But what you can do is swap them out with a CRF150 bottom bolt that's got regular valves in it, and you can play with your valving that way. I haven't done that myself with these. It's just something that when I read and looked at everything, it looks the same. You just have to change the shims in that. All right, guys, so there you have it. Like I said, I'm just trying to keep this post alive. I'm pulling it off of Supermoto. I'm leaving it on Supermoto Junkie. I'm sorry. I'm pulling the photos off of Photo Bucket because I'm not going to pay $400 a year for everybody to see the pictures. So I think this is a better way. If you have any questions, please post them up in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. The setup that I have right now with the cut down springs it's working really good. I have the 12-inch Savas on it and the extended swing arm. So feel free to ask any questions. I can do a quick video on the swing arm and the differences and what to look for when you're buying a used one. But the bike feels good the way it is. So guys, please like, subscribe, hit the bell for further notifications. And until next time, this is Tepco Cycle Repair.